Gentrification can be simply stated as the development of a certain territory and moving in of richer foreigners and pushing out the original inhabitants. And this is a social issue as well as an economic issue. And this can likely be caused by tourism or any kind of marketing that draws attention to a particular area that was originally inhabited by a smaller number of people. While urbanization and growth is an overall beneficial asset for any nation, gentrification is a different case as it often results in the loss of homes or skyrocketing housing prices for the original inhabitants. And there are two cases in Korea which I will briefly mention, which are Samcheongdong and Myeongdong. And Samcheongdong was a quiet neighborhood in Seoul. And compared to other places in Seoul with higher living costs, Samcheongdong was relatively affordable. It was like a small artisan town with half the population in South Korea living in Seoul. It was a rare and quiet neighborhood to see in that area. And it was a small artisan neighborhood for creators to escape the extremely high prices of real estate in Seoul and elsewhere. In other words, it was not a hot spot for people to gather. However, starting around the late 2000s, the area in Samcheongdong became attractive for tourists for its conservation of traditional Korean housing and culture. Hence, it became a tourist attraction for both locals and foreigners. Myeongdong is also in a similar situation, and with COVID-19, the situation is worsening for smaller businesses and local owners. According to eDaily, several franchise companies in Myeongdong have risen in prices per square meter significantly over 2019 to 2020 due to the pandemic. For instance, Nature's Republic, a popular makeup brand, rose by almost 9% from 2019 to 2020. As a nation that went through rapid economic development over the past few decades, this kind of phenomenon has been expected, yet the impact it has on local businesses and families cannot be diminished. To investigate further into this issue, I interviewed a researcher from LH Urban Regeneration Support, or LH 도시재생 지원기구, and his written response, which I will summarize and translate, is as follows. So, the first question that I asked is, have you ever done work related to gentrification? And he works in urban regeneration, however, it is very closely connected to gentrification. And that is why I asked him about this issue. And the second question I asked is, are there attributes to gentrification in Korea that are not found in other places in the world? So there are particular areas in Korea that are known for its gentrification, such as Seocheon, Hongdae, Samcheongdong, Mangwon-dong, Seongsu-dong, Gyeongnidan-길, and Garosu-길. And they're all pretty much the outcome of like this kind of really rapid urban development that I mentioned before. And in the past, the small areas north to Apgujeongdong has also been known for its gentrification. And Apgujeongdong was a popular area in the 80s and 90s to a younger generation, and hence why its rapid development caused it to be gentrified, and now it is more or less a desolate area. In any particular living area that has a significantly lower cost of living is usually exploited and gentrified, especially through appealing to newer and trendier individuals or consumers, and hence growing this kind of rapidly growing market in this area. In the capitalist context, there are aspects of gentrification that are obviously inevitable, and as of now, there are no strict rules to prevent this kind of gentrification. The third question I asked is, what do you think was the precedent for gentrification in Korea? And he replied that it is hard to say what exactly was the beginning of gentrification in Korea, but speaking from issues that cause social turmoil, there are the rapid development of urban areas for housing. And as we can see today, the price to live in a house in Korea is unreasonably expensive, especially in Seoul. And it can also be attributed to the theory of regional imbalance or regional disparity, and which is a key theory to understanding gentrification. The fourth question I asked is gentrification inevitable in Korea today? And he replied by saying that I believe that gentrification is to some degree inevitable given the context of a capitalist world, and given the authority to control its impact is difficult to be found at the present moment. And the fifth question I asked is, if it is inevitable, how can the negative impact of gentrification on the original inhabitants of the region be mitigated? And he replied that the market for housing as well as other real estate problems must first be resolved, either through government or state kind of legislature, and to protect the indigenous population of the area. Housing can be expanded not in a capitalistic measure, but as a social remedy for this issue, so kind of social housing. And the last question I asked is, are there any measures that the government can take to prevent gentrification? If so, what measures do you think are the most appropriate? And he replied by saying that currently there are a set of laws, and it is a set of laws in Korea, which I was not sure how to translate, but it's called yes, it's called the 임대치보호, which is like a protection law for housing, and that is a set of laws that allow for an increase in average housing period, preventing people from being forced out of their living areas, and it's effective mostly in the centers of Seoul. And if all these measures are effective, there will be a rise in real estate value as well as in economic growth and activity, which has been precedented by countries such as the United Kingdom. And so, yeah, that is about it for gentrification in Korea. And thank you for listening.